Okay, we reached 6 o'clock. If you can start the meeting, please. Welcome to tonight's special Finance Review Group meeting. Please note that it is intended to live stream tonight's meeting. However, due to ongoing technical issues, this may not be successful. If successful, a recording of the meeting will be provided on the Council's website within 24 hours. The induction loop system is now operative. As everyone here knows that if you're speaking, please turn it on. Once you've spoken, please turn the microphone off. And we don't have any private agenda items.
Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any disclosures of interest? Oh, sorry, do we have any apologies first?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Miller and also Councillor M. Hussain, who's been substituted by Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Do we have any disclosures of interest? No. Thank you. Do we have any references from other committees or bodies?
None, Chair.
Any Section 106 disclosures?
None.
Any other announcements? Chair's announcements?
None, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We now move over to agenda item. Well, it's agenda. We call it agenda item 8. Yep. Okay. I thought it'd be 1 by 6. Okay, so I'll introduce the item and then we will give opportunity to David Franks to provide reasons why this was called in. So the purpose of this report is to invite the Finance Review Group to consider the call-in of executive decision, specifically in relation to residents' parking permit charges. The recommendations are that the Scrutiny Finance Review Group is recommended to consider the call-in decision of the executive, specifically in relation to residents' parking permit charges. The background of this is that meeting was held on 15th of January 2024. The executive considered a report of the Director of Finance, Revenue and Benefits on the proposed scale of fees and charges for 24-25. The report recommended the approval of the proposed scale of fees and charges to apply from 1st of April 2024, appended to the report. In accordance with Standing Order 57.1, 2 members of the Council, Councillors Bridgen and Councillor Franks, have called in the decision to review by scrutiny insofar as it relates to the residents' parking permit charges. So can I call on Councillor Franks to provide reasons on why this was called in?
Thank you, Chair. The reason is quite simple, really. It is outrageous that residents' parking permit fees are being increased by more than twice, and in some cases almost 3 times the rate of inflation. We do understand that the scheme has to be paid for, but the fact is that the residents are faced with a position where the parking difficulties they have every single day are not of their making. They're all caused by activities that are entirely outside their control, and in all reasonableness, the council should be restricting the increases in fees at least to the rate of current inflation, which is about 4%. And that's the reason for the call-in. I have a proposal to put before you. If you want to, I don't know how you want to play this, Amjad, if you want to ask other people to make their contributions first, or if you want me to table it now, entirely up to you.
That's fine. Before we move over to questions, can I ask Darren to provide further input into the report, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Franks, for your comments. I don't think there's a lot more I can add at this stage other than what is in the report. The call-in did refer to carers' permits as well, so I'm assuming that the call-in applies to all permits and not just residents' permits, Councillor Franks. Is that correct?
It certainly is.
With that clarification then. So the report outlines the rationale behind setting the charges, and I've given a bit of background into the history of the charges over the last 5 years. If I can refer to the carers permits initially, the calling, I think specifically refers to it being particularly harsh and targets some of those least capable of paying it. So the proposal is to increase the charge from £50 to £55 from the 1st of April. The majority of that income actually comes from health organisations, health bodies. So it's the health body that buys the permits on behalf of their carers. And Ash is online. I mean, if I've got that wrong, Ash, please say so. But having reviewed this, the majority of the income comes from health bodies and not the individuals. Whether those health bodies pass that charge on to the carers is a decision for them. But we actually derive our income from organisations like the Luton Dunstable NHS Trust. I appreciate residents' permits are costs that affect our residents directly, and they do have to pay them. The executive did approve the introduction of an escalator, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, whereby we charged a higher rate for second, third and multiple permits for households. And again, that was introduced to try and, as a measure to try and reduce reliance on car usage, which is an aim of Luton 2040, but also to ensure that permits were only purchased as and when necessary. So we were trying to discourage multi-permit use holders within the same household as far as possible. In terms of the increase, I've laid out in the report, and the information that's been provided shows that the cost of enforcing activity to the council has increased by more than the rate that we've put the permits up by over the last 5 years. There's also the cost of administering those permits. So we have to deal with the applications. We have to update records. We have to produce and send out the permits. So that all comes at a cost as well. The enforcement activity I can't comment on. Whether the parking enforcement activity of residents' parking zones is adequate to address the issues that Councillor Franks has addressed, I can't comment on that personally. But the purpose of putting the charges up by was it £64.80 to £71? Inflation was higher when these proposals were put forward. Inflation has fallen quite sharply over the last couple of months, probably sharper than most of us, if not all of us, were expecting. And I appreciate that the government are also saying that they, and the Bank of England today have said they expect inflation to continue falling quite sharply. However, our costs are still higher. Our costs don't necessarily reflect inflation, and our enforcement officers have received above inflationary pay awards for the last 2 years and are likely to do so next year as well. So on that basis, as officers, we feel that the proposals in front that were presented to members were fair. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to open it up to questions only at the moment, and then we'll move over to what Councillor Franks has put forward as an amended recommendation. So, Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. I wonder if any could assist me. In the list, it's got carers permit, and below that, carers permit residential zone. What's the difference? Because there is a difference in the proposed increase as well.
I'm happy to take that question, Chair.
Oh yes, okay. Please. Yeah. Oh yeah, I did see it.
Yeah. So, Councillor Taylor, thanks for the question. Just for clarity, the residents' carers are permits issued to people that care for residents within the home. Typically, these are friends and family of individuals that require daily care. The carers' permits are issued, as Darren's kindly explained, to professionals. So these are people that work in professional roles in caring capacities, midwives and such. So that's the distinction.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I had Councillor Mahmood. You had your hand up.
It was only questions that you're taking at the moment.
Questions only at the moment.
I haven't got questions.
Okay, any further questions? Thank. And any comments? Go ahead.
You turn my mic off. I'm joking. So, I mean, look, in all honesty, I'm surprised we're here because we talk about inflation. The amount by which it's going up by is not the rate of inflation. I mean, carer's permit here would have gone up £60 if it was by the rate of inflation. All we're doing as a council is covering costs, and the officers just explained it's gone up by 33% for civil enforcement. So I'm really surprised that the Liberals have decided to pick on this point. And secondly, in keeping the Luton 2040 vision, the reason why second and third cars are charged higher is surely we're trying to reduce car usage. We've got to bring in an incentive for people to stop using their cars. So I find it quite surprising. I mean, 33% increase in civil enforcement. All we're doing is covering costs, and I'm very surprised that it's here. I mean, if the Liberals have got an alternative on I'd love to hear it.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, I'll move over to Councillor Frank's recommendation, or amendment rather. Okay, we'll move over to the amendment. Okay, so with the piece of paper that's been circulated, can I ask Councillor Franks first of all to actually read it out and explain this any further?
Yeah, I will read it out in case anybody is listening into the meeting on the broadcasting system. What I'm proposing is that the executive be advised that since the parking problems experienced by residents are all caused by activities which are entirely beyond their control, it is the view of Scrutiny Finance Review Group that they should not have to face increases in their permit fees which are greater than the current rate of inflation. Some of the proposals here are 3 times the rate of inflation. Many of them are twice the rate of inflation, and every single one of them is well above the current rate of inflation. I can understand that the presenting officer, as he is a finance officer, is not able to comment on the enforcement, but I can. And enforcement in most of these residential parking zone schemes is about equivalent to everything else the council enforces. The council is hopeless at enforcing anything. And certainly the Liberal Democrat councillors who represent areas that have residence parking schemes will tell you that one of the biggest complaints they get is that the schemes are not enforced properly. So if you're going to keep banging up the fees, and certainly if you're increasing them well above the rate of inflation, the least you can do is to make sure that the damn things are enforced properly.
Do any members wish to ask Councillor Franks any questions? Councillor Abbas?
I'd like to ask Councillor Franks, he talks about these problems experienced by residents which are not entirely beyond their control. I mean, what are you alluding to? And I'm not sure what you're referring to. And could you please explain?
I thought it was pretty obvious, actually. The reason for residents' parking zones schemes are because there are parking issues which are not of the residents' making. L&D Hospital area, for example, is a classic case. Anywhere near the airport. Talk to councillors from Southward, not actually near the airport, but near enough to attract holidaymakers parking their cars for 2 or 3 weeks and clogging up the roads. None of these problems are of the making of the residents. They are all imposed upon them by activities that are activities of other people.
I'm not sure I entirely buy that, Councillor Franks, because some of these people have been living there for a number of years. I'd yet to see the evidence. We've had a number of meetings where we've talked about the airport. We've had the Lib Dems put in motions to get the airport to pay for parking permits. I don't. We've been there. We've done it. I don't know. And equally, like my fellow councillor Mahmood, I'm surprised this decision has been called in. If you look at what's happening over the last 5 years, particularly for carers and people there, they haven't had a rise for a good 2 or 3 years. And if you look at over a 5-year period, then these rises are within reason. And I just wonder whether our colleagues across the chamber have actually seen what council finances are like. I don't know if you've seen a report today where the LGA has said there's a 4 billion black hole in council finances over the next year or next couple of years. So, like I said, I don't know what your other solution would be. What would you want? What would you want us to do? Not to put parking up and cut service to vulnerable children. So I'd like to hear what their alternative is in not putting these cuts up to actually finance what we're doing.
It's interesting that the councillor is admitting that quite a number of the charges that the executive have agreed are not following council's policy, which is to recoup the cost of providing the service. That's the official policy of the council. They're actually going out of their way to make a profit on the charges that they're making and using that to offset problems elsewhere in the budget. That's been admitted in at least one presentation that I've seen on the budget. And, either the council has a policy of using these charges to recoup the cost of providing the service, or they're in fact deciding that they want to make a profit out of it all. You can't have it both ways. You either recoup the cost of providing the service, or you run it as a commercial operation to try and make a profit out of your residents.
Councillor Franks is missing my point, or I said earlier that the LGA today announced there's a 4 billion black hole in council budgets. So nobody's profiting here. It's about making sure the holes we've got in our budget are filled. And if that includes putting prices up slightly above the rate of inflation when this was being done, I know inflation has come down, as the officer has said, but that's what this is about. This is about plugging the holes. Would the Lib Dems prefer the council to go bankrupt?
No, of course we wouldn't. The issue here, if I just pick up one bit of it to begin with, if you take, for example, the increases that are being put on carers, all we're doing is switching budget problems from the council to the NHS in the one case, and in the other case, we're actually discouraging family members from being able to look after their loved ones, and we're penalising them for doing that while saving both the council and the NHS money. So no, we don't accept that. I think that was just a comment, just deliberately to stir things up.
But if you look at those carers over the last 5 years, as this paper clearly says, those rises are within inflation. They're not over the 5-year period in line with inflation.
Thank you. I think we're going around in this conversation. So I'm gonna stop the question, this particular bit of questions here, and move on to Councillor Mahmood.
I'll just completely, I think it needs to go on record that what we're trying, I completely reject the allegation that we're trying to make a profit. When council services, the cost has gone up by £15 billion since 2021-22, according to the LGA. What we're doing is recouping costs. I completely reject the idea that we're making a profit. There's an interesting point. I think it's really important that this is on record. Councillor Franks keeps saying the current rate of inflation, 2 to 3 times the current rate of inflation. Well, inflation's been cumulative for the last few years. It worsened during the Liz Truss mini budget, and to basically say it's all about the current rate of inflation, you certainly wouldn't award pay awards just on the current rate of inflation. You'd go back on its cumulative impact.
Councillor Franks, do you want to come back on that?
I think it's all been said, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Comments? Okay, thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Matt Hussey to carry on with the proposals and the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask initially, one of the options is to refer to executive. Does Councillor Franks want his proposal included in that if it is voted for, or as a separate reference?
I'm sorry, I didn't get all that, Matt.
I'm sorry. So the options are to the FRG. You can indicate that there's no objection to the call-in decision being implemented. The second option is to refer the call-in back to executive for reconsideration. Now, the executive may recommend that executive amend the call-in decision in some way. Do you want the actual your proposal included into that if we do refer back to executive?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
That's exactly what the intention is.
Thank you. And the last option is to refer the call-in to full council. So if members are happy, if I can put this to the vote. So the first option is to indicate you have no objection to the called-in decision being implemented. Can I do a roll call on the vote, please? If I can go for...
Excuse me, I've actually moved something.
Yes,
I would have thought that should be voted upon first.
Yes, okay. So is Councillor Franks's proposal seconded? Okay, thank you. So if we put that to the vote first, then so Councillor Franks's proposal, can I have for or against? So start with Councillor Abbas. Thank you. Councillor Ahmed. Thank you. Councillor Begum.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Franks.
For.
Councillor Malik.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmood.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Raja.
Against.
Councillor Taylor.
Against.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne. So that's not passed. So majority against. If I can move on to the next option then. So option 1 is to indicate they have no objection for the call-in decision being implemented. Could I ask Councillor Abba? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ali, I need to ask you on that one as well. Sorry, my apologies on the previous one.
2 votes.
You get 1 on this. So this is for the Councillor Franks's proposal. 4. Okay. So it's 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against. So that's not carried. So the next option is to indicate they have no objection to the called-in decision being implemented. Councillor Abbas.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Begum.
4.
Councillor Franks.
Against.
Councillor Malik. Thank you. Councillor Mahmood.
4.
Councillor Raja.
4.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wynne.
Against.
And Councillor Ali.
Against.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 7, 4, and 3 against. So don't really need to do the next option. So that's not. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And the decision therefore is number 2.
The first one. No objection to the calling.
Okay, that's fine. So the final outcome is that there is no objection to the calling decision being implemented. And therefore that concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you.